Travis
Okay.
Johnson.
Yes.
Okay, I love you for this reason. Well, this is why I fell in love with you, first of all, professionally. I was at my first Disrupt HR.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was at Boulevard.
Yeah,
Was it at Boulevard?
Mm-hmm. And the very first one in Kansas City.
Yeah, and this was 5-6 years ago? No.
2017. March 2017. Mm-hmm.
Oh, jeez. I had never been to one, and at the time, I was serving on the Society of HR Management, the board as a diversity chair, and this came up in a meeting to be like, oh, let's bring Disrupt HR to Kansas City. And I just remember, the legacy HR leaders just worried, like, what is Disrupt HR? And I'm like, I have to go. I'm curious because I'm all about a good disruption.
Yeah.
And not knowing what to expect, I got gum. Not knowing what to expect, that's inappropriate. Don't do that in an interview. But not knowing what to expect, and I show up, and you're probably like the fourth or fifth speaker, because the way the Disrupt HR works is it's 5 minutes, 20 slides.
Yep.
How many seconds?
It's like, oh my God, what is it? I think it's basically 20 seconds a slide.
20 seconds a slide, and you've got 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And so
which is harder than it like you
it's
would
difficult.
Expect. Like I even had like shorter amount of slides, and they're like, you have to have this minimum of slides, because I was like, I can't do that fast. I mean, I can't do it. And they go, you've got to learn how to do it. So
right.
Like, okay.
It sucks because you're so stressed out before you get up there. It's just like anxiety. And I wasn't doing it, but I was like, I have to go observe this. And you're like I can't remember if it's sixth speaker or whatever. And you get up there, and it was doing your Kegels. Yeah. And I was just like, and I wasn't like everybody else, because everyone else was like, gasp. And I just was like, go on. Like,
tell me more about these Kegels.
Kegels, like these workplace Kegels. Tell me all about them. So that's how, and afterwards I just had to meet you. I'm like, oh my God, that was amazing. And you just went right into the raw talk about how HR, human resources, the realities of it. Yeah. And I'm so happy to have you here today to talk about those realities.
Yes, thank you. I'm happy to be here. This is exciting.
Yeah.
My first time being on a podcast.
So tell our listeners about you, your career, and your name, and just about what makes you a badass in several reasons.
Okay, well, Travis Johnson. I've been in HR. Oh man, I'm like on an interview. Literally, 13 plus years. Pretty much. I did recruiting. I've done benefits. I've done HR management. The whole smorgasbord, which I have loved every aspect that I've got to do in my small amount of career. I've also been super fortunate because I've always kind of been the one to push the envelope when it came to HR. And one of the companies I work for, especially out in Colorado, I worked hand in hand directly with the two CEOs, and there were so many times we'd have conversations where they would want to do something, and I'd be like, yeah, I don't agree with that, and we're not going to do that. And they were super respectful of it, and we're like, okay, I guess that's why we hired you. Yeah. So sometimes it's not always the best for me, because I kind of take that into any company I go to, and they're like, who's this bitch? But I'm like, so yeah, I've done it all from super entrepreneurial companies to really corporate companies, which has definitely been a struggle for me in my personality and how I approach HR, because those really corporate companies sometimes just don't want to bend on how they operate, and those are also sometimes the ones that have the bad environments,
right? And
the very rigid, and it's like, okay, you do have that 1-2 year turn, and they go on, and you can't keep good people. But outside of HR, in the military as well, been in 19 years. Started off as a E1 private, worked the ranks quickly just because of my assertiveness and passionate, as they say.
There you go.
And just kind of how I approach leadership, and not how the military is with their rigid way. I've always kind of been a different different approach to leadership and how I take on things, which has had me be super successful, and why I'm actually a first sergeant now of a company. I progressed very quickly, and it's been great. So yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Good. Where did you find HR, or did it find you?
It found me. I actually started off right out of college doing junior buyer planning for at an advertising agency, traditional media, and I
more on the creative.
And I kind of realized after about a year of doing it, it wasn't my cup of tea. Crazily, males don't do very well in the media side of advertising. It's very female predominant.
Males or gay males?
Regular straight males. The gay males, yeah, but even then they almost flock more towards the this is going to sound very awful to say. They almost flock more to the account service side because they get to interact more with clients.
Gotcha.
And they get to get wined and dined.
Gotcha.
By vendors and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
And take the trips. But yeah, so I realized it wasn't my thing, and I liked the company that I was at the time, but I didn't want to leave. And the director of operations heard about it, and she goes, I have an HR position. You can make it what it is. And so I fell into it, fell in love, and that's really where it grew. I remember I did everything HR. One of the things I did a lot of, particularly in that role as a specialist, was recruiting.
Gotcha.
And I did not like the idea of recruiting. I was just like, oh my God, all I do is interview. And then at one point I said, I've got to make this fun. I got to enjoy it. And so I started turning it almost into a game, an experience where, every day I meet and get to talk to 2 or 3 different new people and, sit here in chairs like this and learn some effed out stories or background and like, oh my God, like, okay, cool, you're having word vomit and I don't know if I should really hire you anymore.
God.
So, and I just
were
loved
you
it.
interviewing me? Because that just I have a tendency to word vomit. I get nervous
possibility.
And it just word vomit.
Yeah, so from there it was just, I really had a passion, and I feel like every time I've ever been in a company doing HR, it's always been, he's very passionate. That seems to be a thing that comes up a lot in my reviews, or hell, even in the military. A lot of my my reports are always one of my most passionate soldiers, and more assertive and outspoken and loud and energetic. So yeah, it's just like, it's always been me. I would have never thought in a million years I would have gotten into HR. And one of my degrees is actually communications, emphasis in interpersonal organizational development.
Okay.
But I never had any idea that I would get into that aspect.
Right.
Because I was more focused on, my other degree was in political science, and I was more focused on that and thought, what it could do and help for the public speaking and all that. And so I never would have thought in a million years I would land in HR, because even ironically, when I enlisted in the military and I took my ASVAB, the 3 highest scores I had was petroleum supply, maintenance, and human resources. And
so can we just take a moment as to where the ranking in the military was for how they saw the value of personnel? Right. Petroleum and HR.
Right. And it's like, and then we got this little outlier over here.
Yeah.
And I feel like, honestly, if I would have chose the HR in the military, I don't think I would have ever gotten into it in the civilian side, because to me it would have become such a chore. Yeah. And I wouldn't want to do it. And I mean, I've been doing petroleum for 19 years. It's the only MOS I hold. And I love it. Weirdly, I love that MOS.
Yeah.
And I was an instructor for the longest time because I had such a passion about it, and I loved teaching and educating people. So for the last 9 years, I was an instructor in the reserve, and I loved it.
Nice.
I loved getting up there and teaching.
Yeah.
Filling the eager little minds. It was just great.
Good. I don't think people oftentimes, when going into HR, and I would often look around when I came away from my first job in HR, because it found me because I could just type 80 words a minute.
Oh.
And the temp agency was like, oh, you can go over here. This director of HR, they're building a hospital and she needs help typing the policies. And I memorized the policies doing that.
Yeah.
And so it just came around, and and she was a great mentor, a leader, taught me everything I wanted to know was in healthcare. And I remember after that going to my next organization and thinking at that time, why the hell would anybody really choose this profession?
Right.
This is a true calling, and it you know, of what it is. And I'm just like, what the hell? And when I would hear that people like got degrees in it and stuff, I'm like, you did?
Poor soul.
You did that on purpose.
Oh,
Did you know what you were getting into?
Right. Because I mean, it's funny you say that because I always joke around about how people who are in HR, they're a masochist. They love pain, apparently. They love humiliation, you know, because you, in HR, you sadly and disgustingly to say, get treated like shit a lot
You're
of the
the
time.
lonely
You're the punching bag.
Yeah.
And, you know, people sometimes wonder why we're so disgruntled sometimes in
Yeah.
HR because you can only take so much before you think, you know what, today's the day that I just snap.
Yeah.
Today's the day I become a Lifetime movie. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you balance out. So in MOS, and it's funny that you say that about with your AFSC is what we had in the Air Force. By the way, thank you for your service.
Oh, well, thank you, and thank you too.
Yeah, thank you for your service, and you're still serving. This has been how long now?
19 years. It's
congratulations.
Oh yeah, I'm like it's right within grasping distance.
Dude.
I always joke around. It's a nice little hobby to have. Some people, you know, collect trains. I apparently, you know, do the reserve. So yeah,
it's a great hobby.
Yeah,
it's a great hobby, and there's a lot of people that are certainly grateful for you for having that hobby. So, but AFSC, because I was working I was working HR, and then I went into the military. They put me on military leave, and I joined the Guard. And they said, well, you could do personnel. And I was like, hell no.
Right.
Like, I don't want to do this double.
Right.
But I moved me into public affairs and also into logistics. I wanted to be out on the flight line with the fighter jets. And I'm like, yeah, that's where I want to be. And so I got such a thrill of doing that. So I was like, I'm glad I got a break from the HR because that'd have been a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially HR in the military.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. You're definitely
talk about bureaucratic systems.
Right, and you're a paper pusher.
Yeah.
Times, so
a lot of
you don't get to have a lot of freedom or make changes or movement. So
yeah. So let's talk about HR.
Okay.
Let's talk about the good and the bad and the ugly. I know you're not afraid to do that. And so, what are you seeing right now after the pandemic? The big heightened is everything when it comes to what we're seeing, the mass resignation, the exodus of employees leaving the market and everything. What are you seeing currently? What are the feels that you can resonate with other HR professionals out there in that loneliness space that are being the punching bags?
I feel like, oh, wow. I think one of the biggest things that we're seeing is just the recourse of the pandemic and it's been a year now. You know, most people have, for the most part, been back to work for 9 months ish.
Yeah.
But it feels like it's just become so much administrative bullshit, you know, especially if you're in companies where they require you to wear a mask and all that. I mean, it's just following those rules and really sitting down, you know, being the policy police for lack of a better term. I feel like that's a lot that we're seeing right now. Also, you know, trying to become a hybrid, because even the company that I currently work with, they try to do this hybrid mentality, but obviously you can only do so much hybrid with certain positions, certain industries. You know, banking, you can't necessarily take the money home.
Right. The clerk can't count it.
Industrial
manufacturing, you can't take the automotive part home. You're like, I'll be back tomorrow.
Trust me, I'm a Libra. It's very, you know, you'll see that huge shift. I mean, especially a lot of companies right now are, you know, selling off or leasing out their businesses or their business space because all of a sudden like, oh, wow, we can, you know, telecommute and we can do all this sort of stuff working from home and remote or from a coffee shop, whatever. So you're seeing a lot of that. Unfortunately, from what I have seen or kind of got the impression is HR, you can't really be that way.
No.
A lot of times, you know, and you see this huge culture shift right now where they're trying to make us which it should always been this way, we're business partners,
Right.
strategic business partners. We're not the policy police. We're not the paper pushers, but they still want to have that feel with HR. And, so they're the ones that are still working on location and stuff like that. But it's almost this catch-22 because even though we're there, and especially with the pandemic and all the rules and the regulations and all that, I feel like it's almost we're there, but we're not even being business partners. We're still being policy police.
Yeah, when the challenge hits, we
Yeah.
get back to being policy police.
Yep.
No longer strategic business
Yep.
partners.
Yeah, it stinks because you're there on the, I hate to use the term front line, but you are, but you're not getting to do anything that's strategic, and that's kind of how I am in my job. I just feel like all it is just admin. I'm like, when do I get to start really repositioning myself and actually doing things that are going to help benefit the employees and the management, stuff like that? Like, where do we get to actually be that business partner and help the company, and not just, oh, well, this person, didn't wear their mask.
Yeah.
So we need to, discipline them because that's part of our rules. It's like, there's got to be some give and take here.
Yeah. And it's funny because I've seen leaders where HR carries a big part of the value. Well, a lot of the good HR leaders that I know and colleagues. And when I say good, I mean they think of the people. They think of the human. They think of the person. I do understand business partnership.
Yeah.
I have worked in a capacity of a business partner. And so I do get those things. But it's interesting because HR carries such a huge value in the organization that when there's challenges like a pandemic, pre, post, mid, everything, it's funny that I've seen leaders it's then quickly that the HR is moved out from the table, and it's like, go take care of compliance. Now we're strategy because now we're in survival mode. It's interesting because I'm like, do you not think HR can help you not only survive but actually thrive through this situation?
Right. It's very, very reactionary. It's not even, like you just said, like survive through it, like being proactive and looking forward. It's what are we doing in the moment right now? What are we doing to stay compliant, stay afloat? And then once this is over, now we'll start looking towards the future. And which is detrimental to the company and to the health and welfare of the employees, because you're just living in the now and not helping look down, the road. I mean, and it's just, which is really sad too, because it's almost like HR they're not part of the big picture. Like, all I'm here to do is help you be compliant, apparently, or make sure we're running good right now. And it's like, how do they fit into the big picture in the grand scheme of things?
Yeah.
And I've always said, there's two mindsets when it comes to business. There's the HR mindset and there's the business mindset. HR can look in the moment down the road. Business, a lot of the times, looks at like either in the moment now, or they will look down the road. It just depends on if you're this type of management or you're like in leadership. And that's where it's such a disconnect. And I see that, in a lot of the companies I've worked for, especially those industrial companies, auto manufacturers, construction, a lot of that, they can't see that. And when I've had to be in that role and say, okay, let's look at the big picture. Like, we're going to look at this and why we don't do things like this, or why we should try them in a different aspect. They don't get it. Well, this person's, just annoying me. I want to throw them out for the day, or I want to fire them. Okay, well, this is why we don't do that.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a struggle, and I think it's been really heightened right now during the pandemic because everyone is so fearful because it's so unknown, and they're, now we're here a year later, and we've made so much progress, and they're, we're within grasping distance of being back to almost 100% normalcy for the most part. And they're like, let's not do anything to F it up,
Yeah.
Like, we're going to still, like, we're going to make an example out of you if you're going to get us almost to setting us back, which is sad. It really is sad.
Yeah. But that had to start somewhere. Yeah, and when I say that whole idea of, I'm gonna go deep and disruptive.
Go deep.
I'm gonna go deep and disruptive. And I know that the majority of the issues within our management force, middle managers, frontline managers, those that are really managing the people. So you and I know that succession planning that's a dream.
Right.
Unless we can collectively come together to figure out a way that when these baby boomers just get the hell out of the door,
Right.
that we find a way of what we're going to do to take over those roles. Because what's typically happened with those manager leadership roles has been like, oh, you've been here the longest, you know the job, you get that role.
Right.
I have seen a larger majority of my human resources contacts, connections that have been like, how did you get that role? I won't say the majority of my HR connections, scratch that. I will see the majority of the time where I've had organizations that have reached out to me in some capacity in regard to consulting has typically been they had an HR person and they went to, or they needed an HR role. Maybe there was an EOC complaint. Maybe they had to settle. Maybe in the terms of a mediation agreement, it said you have to have an HR manager because you're fucking this shit up, basically. And so then it's like, okay, I'll get my admin assistant or I'll get my accountant or I will get my general manager's daughter
to
now run the HR.
Yep.
And so it's difficult in a lot of ways to say, because now I've seen in a lot of times is that has ruined the opportunity in so many ways for good HR people to be able to get opportunities. And a lot of times these people move up into VP roles.
Yeah.
These people move up into HR roles because then they just become a legacy within the thing. And it is so toxic and so devaluing to an organization that they will keep that individual there. Yeah. They will keep them there before they will take any value and stock into their people. And that's a rant.
No.
But in my mind, it's like, it started somewhere. Like the whole thing with the whole mass exodus and people leaving, it started somewhere.
Right.
There was a trust that was broken because you put somebody in a role that didn't know what the hell they were doing. You put somebody in roles where you did not put the value in them, or you did not provide or invest in them on their development to be a good leader, to be a good HR person. And now here you are.
Yeah. No, it's not a rant at all.
Rant over.
It's the gospel truth. There's so many. Yeah, they throw people in there. I mean, my sister, for God's sakes, like the company she works for, it's the owner's wife, and my sister reaches out to me a lot, be like, I've got to pick your brain about HR because this is what's happening, and I'm like, yeah, that really should not be happening, and unfortunately, like you said, like there isn't succession planning is such a lofty idea and dream, and we're gonna put it on our 1-year goal, our 5-year goal, our big hairy audacious goal list, because it sounds great and it gives us some warm and fuzzies, but no one ever executes it, and they're not investing in their employees or saying, hey, here's how we're going to develop a leadership program within the company, we're going to move you up this way or whatever, and here's how we can cross you over. And unfortunately they don't do that. I mean, it's just the lack of training these days is just so awful. And the big thing you and I have seen in HR a lot is they put so much emphasis on degrees. And I mean, I've hired people.
Yeah.
I worked for a company when I was an HR manager that I ended up having an HR assistant, and I had two mindsets. I'm either going to hire someone that has no more than a year of experience because I don't want them set in their ways, or I'm going to hire someone that is like straight out of college with an HR degree. I hired someone that had a master's degree in HR management, and unfortunately I had to teach him everything because he obviously didn't take what he learned and applied it. Of course, too, I think he also went and got his master's degree because his brother was going to school to be a doctor, so he had to,
he had to one up his brother.
Yep, keep up with the Joneses. Unfortunately, the Joneses was also his brother, and
not to discredit HR, but doctor, masters in HR.
Right. I'm a doctor.
Brother's still winning. Sorry, but brother's still winning.
So, and that it was like that was an aha moment for me. I'm like, holy shit! Like, what the hell are they teaching?
Yeah.
I mean, and that was just like a really wake up huge moment for me. And that's when, when I hired in my new person, I shifted everything in my department. And I just hired on a recruiter, and he was amazing. I knew from the get-go, he was going to do great, and he did. But it goes back to like, we're not properly planning succession, training them, or saying, hey, yeah, you're an accountant, we're going to put you as HR, unfortunately, because we can't hire someone.
Mm-hmm.
But say, hey, why don't we send you to these workshops? And why don't you go learn or go shadow some HR people?
Why don't we take 6 months?
Right.
6 months.
Right.
That's not a lot of time.
Right.
When you think about it.
It's not. In the grand scheme of things, it's not. And that they don't do that. It's just, here it is. We throw you in, sink or swim.
Yeah.
And, unfortunately, I've seen that, in a job that I currently work, where we have our HR people come in, and it's a whole other... I joke around. I'm like, hey, everything you know about HR, throw it out the window, because it's this is its own HR.
Yeah.
And, I've been trying really hard to stay on top of creating a training program for our department, because there's so much to take in, so much to learn, and it's almost like hitting the ground running.
Mm-hmm.
And me having a training and development background, it's hard for me to sit here and watch people almost be set up for failure.
Especially for the military.
Yeah.
When the military does have...
Yeah.
So
exactly.
that I'm sure you just...
Yeah, I'm like,
whew.
I'm that one over there in the corner just like twitching and, hitting the pencil against the head. And but it's also one of those things too where it's, oh, well, the only way you're going to progress up in this company is if you go up to the headquarters in another state. There is really no upward movement here within this location.
Yeah.
So then, okay, it's like, well, then how do you sit here and keep them, I don't even want to say entertained, engaged?
Right.
What makes them want to stay here, knowing that they're pretty much capped at what they can do within in this location?
Yeah.
Because personally, I don't want to move somewhere else. I have family here, I have friends here, I have roots here, and I think that's a huge thing. And it's getting to that whole investing in your employees.
Yeah.
And people don't do that. I mean, they look at the bottom line. Well, I can't really afford to, spend money on it. I can't afford to do this. Okay, well, go back to your freaking Excel spreadsheet and, see where you can move some numbers.
Right.
Because that's one of the number one things. People don't look for money. Our generation and the young whippersnappers below us, they don't look so much for the money as they do the work-life balance. The purpose. What does it serve me? How do I contribute to the overall success of the company?
Yeah.
What am I going to get out of it? I'll be happy if I'm here 3 or 5 years, as long as I know that I'm contributing to the work and I'm feeling good at the end of the day and not stressed out, not understanding, or like, I don't understand what I do here, how I contribute. And that's what companies don't understand. They think they can almost really buy their employees by, oh, here's money. Yeah, that's great. But when I'm leaving work stressed out and wanting to rip out my perfectly coiffed hair, it's just like, I don't want, I don't have any meaning.
Take your bonus and shove it up your ass.
Right.
Honestly, like
it
gets to a point, and that's the point we're at now.
Right.
Is you like, and I love you said the purpose, because I love that this generation of workforce and talent, where they have said, fuck this. If you are not going to take the time to invest in me with my purpose and everything, I'm going to go out and I'm going to invest in myself, and I'm going to do it on my own. And now we see the rise of the gig. We see the rise in consulting. Right. We see the mass exodus. And yet leaders are still like,
well, why aren't you staying?
Well, let's just go back to the way we were doing it.
Yep.
And this is a problem with the labor market. They're lazy. There's too many unemployment benefits, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Like, that's not why people are not coming back, and that's not why the people are quitting.
Right.
What you just said is the reason why this generation of workforce and why we have no succession in our future. That's what is happening. It's like, you have failed for years.
Right. Well, I mean,
to invest in me.
Years.
I saw through the recession. You did not invest in my family members, my parents. I saw that you didn't take the investment, and you're doing the same thing to me. Fuck that, I'm out.
Right. Well, exactly to that, because it's, our parents' generation comes from that generation. Your work ethic is and how far you're going to go in a company is based off of how many hours you put in a week.
Yeah.
And, and then it becomes super cats in the cradle and the silver spoon type mentality with the children. And our generation, we joke around because there's, oh, well, the participation trophies and stuff. Well, fucking one thing I will say about the damn participation trophies is it has literally helped people almost understand what they are contributing or how to do better. I mean, I will give props to that, and that's one of those things where it's like, again, how am I contributing? Like, how am I good? How am I affected by this? You know, it's not that I'm lazy or I don't want to work. It's like I want to work, but I also want to know at the same time too, it's making a difference somewhere, and it's literally just not churning a wheel over and over and over again. It's like, what is it happening? You know, and then, but that also, it also trickles down from like the whole leadership aspect of, I've always been a big proponent of be open and honest, be transparent. Yes, there are certain things as HR, as leadership, as you know, owners of a company, you have to hold close to the chest. Absolutely, I get that. But when you're not honest, when you're not sharing, the lack of communication creates animosity, it creates distrust, and it makes the rumor mill start spinning. And then people are like, I don't trust working here. I'm fearful I'm going to get fired, you know, so now I got to put in more hours. And it's like, fuck that. Like, you should not be based off of if you work 45, 50 hours a week as opposed to working 40. If I work 40 hours, the bare minimum a week, but I'm, you know, doing what I need to and making sure my stuff gets done, and even more so, that's what it is. Yeah. You know, and I think that's one thing that we don't give the younger generation credit for is they are very efficient. And yes, they can work their 40 hours a week, but they are also getting a lot more done than our parents' generation did, because again, it's like, well, I got to spread so much out over, you know, and go over 40 hours because I got to show my worth. Yeah. Well, and how much of that 60-hour work week could have been done in 35, 40 hours? Yeah. It's sad. That's a rant.
It is so sad. And you know what? It's interesting because everybody talks about the diversity inclusion. When you work with people, it's like the golden rule. You know, treat others as blah. It's like, you know, the golden rule should really be from here on out, especially after this last year, after the wounding we all took, is being able to say, how about we say honesty is the best policy moving forward? How about that be the golden rule? How about salary transparency? How about, you know, upper mobility transparency, understanding the human evolution, workforce evolution? How about those transparencies? Honesty is going to be the best policy.
Well, and exactly into that, just like you just said it. I mean, especially this last year and with everything that we went through, you know, and not to get political, with the administration and like being told one thing and then another, it's like people have so much distrust now because like, well, the officials are telling me one thing, now it's another. Who do I trust anymore? And then unfortunately that bleeds over into their professional careers, because now it's like the man and the corporation is, you know, feeding me bullshit. So, you know, who do I trust? I only look out for me alone. And that's where that then feeds over into the whole selfish behavior and, you know, not wanting to go above and beyond every now and then or be a team player, because it's like, well, what's going to be in it for me in the end? Yeah. And that's what's sad, is because just, you know, the new younger generation, they're not lazy. They're not that selfish, you know, but at the same time too, again, it goes, they want, you know, I want a work-life balance. I want to make sure that I'm sane at the end of the day and, you know, I'm not crazy. And that's okay. I mean, because again, like everyone has a life outside of their company.
And they have perfectly crafted it by working smarter, not harder. Nico runs circles around me. I mean, he's of the generation, like he works smarter, not harder. Yeah. And what's been interesting working with him is also allowing to be able to say, work with your energy, work in the ways that you like. I think he works nights. He works easier nights, getting a lot of stuff, and he works better in other times. Now we have that capability to do that because of the privilege of growing a consulting business and everything. But at the same time, it's like, it's interesting communicating and being able to say, like, work with the way that you need to. Here's what we need to accomplish each week. Right. And then allow Nico to be a fucking grown up.
Right. It's not, you don't have to work between the 8 to 5, 9 to 5 mentality. Like, as long as the work's getting done, if you're better of a night owl at working and and you're more productive, then so be it. The world's changing, the workforce is changing, the whole company mentality and culture mentality is changing. Change with it. You know? Change with it. And I will say that is one thing that the good old Army has really pushed into people is the operational environment. You adapt to your operation and you adapt your operation to your environment. And I believe that fully fully on the civilian side.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, you have to be adaptive, flexible. A lot of my squad leaders and platoon sergeants make fun of me because I'm like, they always like, be fluid, first sergeant. I'm like, be fluid. It's like, be flexible because shit's a changing and you got to be able to change it. If you can't, you're in the wrong organization.
It is changing. And you've been a significant part of some of those changes. And I want to get to don't ask, don't tell a little bit. Or let's talk about it now. But I do want to, because I want to, before let's go back and talk about, instead of like bashing HR and everything, which is not what we're doing. We're given the realities. This is disruptive because people, it's uncomfortable to hear these things. It's uncomfortable for an HR person to hear these things. But the empathy is this, and we're not being nice, but we're being very kind, because the empathy is the fact that we know there is a loneliness, an loneliness, a punchy bag mentality that you feel in HR. You have felt it, I have felt it, and we know that so many of our HR colleagues and friends have felt that punch. And it's a lonely profession. Yeah. So we know that. But how do we begin transforming that mindset for those leaders that are so fearful of relinquishing any sort of control? Because at the end of the day, none of us are really in control.
Right.
And how do you shift that control ego mentality? But being able to at least align to strategy, because in the Army, you align to, and in the Air Force, you align to the mission, and the mission's going to be different for whatever deployment that you go on, what your assignment is going to be. Our mission is this, and then you align because you've been trained, agile performance, everything. So you align to that. How do we begin allowing a safe space for those leaders to recognize the ego, drop that, and start releasing what they think they're in control of, to start making these improvements?
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's a tough one. I think a very ambiguous statement. I feel like a lot of the times it kind of goes back to the whole, do your Kegel exercise, have, the balls or any other, significant.
Do your Kegels have the balls, have the gumption, have the grit?
Yeah, exactly. Have those open and honest conversations with your leadership.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm hoping that most people who are in HR got hired into that position because of their, background and their experience.
Right.
Having those open conversations. I know personally for me, when I would have it and being in those entrepreneurial companies where I would say, no, I don't agree with that, and here's why. Here's the repercussions, down the road, or here's why we shouldn't do this because this is what could happen, or this is not setting a good image for us. I think that is important. Again, it goes back to that. Think of the operational mindset. Operation looks down the road a lot of the time. Look, take it that way. Talk to the talk that they're used to, that they're comfortable with, and say, okay, here's why. If we do it this way, it's going to cause this ripple effect. I think, as simple and cliche as it sounds, the pros and the cons of, hey, yeah, this is why this is a good idea, but this is also why it's not a good idea.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times I feel like in HR, we've become simply yes man. Like, we're a yes man. Yes. All right. Okay. All right. I'll do that.
I'll do it.
I'll send out another memo.
I don't want to lose my job. I'll do it.
I'll send out another memo. I'll put that in, revise the handbook for the 19th time this year, and it's only, February 3rd, and I will send that out. It's like, no, we're not going to do that. Talking back. You can talk back as HR. Yeah. And even as I said it out loud now, I think it comes to that point of what you said earlier about...
And that's not insubordination.
It's not insubordination.
That's using your voice.
It's using your voice, and it goes back to, like you said earlier, as HR, so many HR professionals are used to being... They're there to protect the company. Yeah. Use that to your advantage. Spin it. Say, here's how I'm going to protect the company, but at the same time... Here's how I benefit the employees. One thing that I'm a big thing on is I do not, whenever I've done consulting or I've written handbooks. I never write employee handbooks as employee handbooks. I call them success guides.
Oh,
Here's how
nice.
you're going to be successful in this company, and this is how the company is going to help you be successful. Not, here are the rules to live by, and if you step out of line, here's what happens. And I worked for a company where the HR director had rewritten the handbook when she came on board. And I'm telling you, this thing, it was a page turner. Like, you would sit there and need a bubble bath to get through it, because it was over 80 pages long.
Oh my God.
Black and white,
Oh my God.
Times New Roman 12 font. And and there was a section, like a 2-page section bulleted on, here's what you do not do that will get you fired.
They could have wrote a book.
Oh, it should have
Not
been
a
book.
They could have
Yeah.
wrote a book
Right.
about their life, but instead
Right.
they wrote a handbook.
I mean, you could have made it into an audiobook. And like listen to it on your drive up to Minnesota to Branson.
Pause. We need to do that. We need to have another show where we actually read through a large employee handbook. Like
Right.
story time. Well, boys and girls, like just
Chapter 7, benefits.
just like who reads
Right.
that shit?
No one.
I
no.
want someone. Email hello@bsgconsulting.org. And if you read an entire employee handbook, I mean front to cover, and you read it, I want you to email me, because I'm
Yeah.
going to have you on my show, and
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you what
Do
you learned.
Right, exactly. And exactly. It's like, people, I mean, that was always the jokes I always had for companies like that, where I'm like, I know you're not going to read this on company time. Go home, get drunk and read it. I don't
sign
know.
the form.
Sign the
please.
form, please. And then, use it to level out your desk at home, or use it for clay pigeoning. I don't know. But,
Yeah.
that's the sad thing is companies are like that. That's their mindset. It's like, change that mindset. Quit setting parameters.
Yeah. Do you think that carried over from the military? Because the military's pretty much like, boom, 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 training, because we're constantly in training.
Right.
We're
right.
always ready for the mission.
Yep.
We're always strategically thinking of what the mission is going to be.
Yeah.
We have to have foresight. Our training is foresight.
Yeah.
Because we have to think about what the enemy is
Right.
doing. We have to think about our allies. We have to always think about those things.
Yeah.
And so in the military, it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like, do these
Right.
steps. You will move up in rank. Do these things. Blah blah
Yep.
blah. And it's interesting because those things don't carry over so much in the civilian, but yet it's such a stress relief when you can do those things. So when you say this is your success guide, it's the same in my training manual that I would receive in the Air Force. I'm like, you're an enlistment. Here's your enlistment training
Yeah.
manual. These are the things that you have to accomplish
Yeah.
in order to move up in rank.
Right. Exactly. And I think that's a good way to look at it too. And it kind of goes back to, like I mentioned earlier, creating like that leadership program, where it's like almost start with creating a leadership program and then even work backwards and create a success guide. Here's the overall success guide of how you're going to be successful and do well in this company. And now we're going to take it and we're going to silo it and say, here's how you're going to be specifically successful in your position. You're working media. Here's how you're going to move up as, going from a coordinator to a junior buyer to a planner, all that. Like, here's how to do it. And I think sometimes people that all comes into the succession.
Yeah.
That all comes back to succession. Put out a plan. It fucking sucks to have to spend the time and do it, but do it.
Do it.
You might have to work outside of those 40 hours that you're, slapping people on the wrist for doing, but you might have to do it on your own time if you don't have the time at work, and make it a joint effort. And I think that's a big thing too, is getting people to buy in and say, yeah, you are HR, but you have 6 different departments across the company. You work and you help everyone have a little bit of buy-in. What great way to sit there and say, I helped contribute to the company by saying, as my position, here's what I do, and here's how I made a company successful, because here's how I helped write our success guides for this specific job. It's getting people to buy in, and I think that's what HR fails a lot of the time to do. They're there to be the policy police, to write it all, do all that sort of stuff, instead of saying, I'm going to go out to the employees, to our clients, and say, hey, help buy in, help me find out how we can make you successful and future employees successful.
Right.
But they don't do it.
And where HR should come in that moment is if there's a disruption in that succession plan, they hold the leader or situation accountable to that succession plan that has been that is the mission of the organization. And by that I meaning if, you get into that bureaucratic system, it's like, well, I'm going to go ahead and hire Fred and employee who's going to come in, and well, it's like, well, what about Sally?
Right.
Are you Sally, Fred, and Dan? You could tell I've taken the HR exam, right? So here comes Sally. She's done the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 training, plan. She's ready to go.
Right.
But it's like, well, I'm going to go ahead and bring Fred in. And it needs to be up to HR to be able to say, you are not the policy police. You're the accountability holders.
Right.
So therefore, it's going to be up to me. It's like, hey, Travis, listen, I know you're trying to help out your buddy, Fred, who needs a job. But however, Sally, we need to stick to what our system is and what our succession plan and mission is. But the trouble comes in, it's like, but I'm so worried I'm going to upset Travis. Travis will get over it.
Right.
Travis will be fine.
Right. Exactly.
And that's that fear that they just can't overcome. But it's funny because our training, our first thing that we had to train through was fear.
Yeah.
We had to first train through fear.
Yeah.
To find out who we were as a soldier.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where, almost like saying like that succession, do like the military. If you want to go to this level, you've got to complete this by this time.
Yeah.
This online course. Now you're going to the residence course. Now the next thing, and it helps you control your destiny.
Yeah.
And I think companies just don't do that. And like you said, people want to bring in this outside because we need change and things like that. We need a new look. And I do definitely agree with that to certain levels and certain positions. Absolutely. But if you want to sit here and bring out outside people instead of bringing someone who's been putting 5 years into the company, working their arse off, but haven't been given that opportunity, now you're going to create animosity with them, and then they're going to jump ship.
There's the culture.
Yep.
And there's your culture brand.
And then it's like, bam, they're gone. And that person who knew a lot of stuff.
Right.
And like, they're like, F this, I ain't going to train someone properly because they wouldn't advance me. Why should I help someone else?
It's funny. They would rather spend the money on a new hire than to put a little bit of that money into the development of an internal employee.
Right. It's like they think by bringing someone in from the outside, it's fresh, it's new, it's exciting. It's spam in a can, like it's so great, But it's like, it's.
Okay, there's gonna have to be an HR coffee table or toilet reading book where it's gonna be HRisms by Travis.
Spam in a can. Oh, it's cool.
This is spam in a can policy here.
High in sodium. And I think that's the thing is I think it's great and it's awesome because this person, they work for this company and they help do this and whatever. And it's like, yeah, that's great. But this person over here knows everything. They can learn other things.
Yeah.
You can send them to trainings. You can do all this sort of stuff. And I don't know. It's crazy to me some of the mindsets that they go through.
Yeah.
When they're trying to like make things better or hire new talent. It goes, just change your mindset.
Change your mindset. That is so difficult.
Right.
And we were put through the fear factor of training through basic training. And then the scariest thing, and I don't know if people told you this, but before I went into the military, people would tell me like, it is not the physical. You'll be fine. It's some of the physical. Tell me right. It's probably 20% physical, but 80% of it is mentality.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
what's happening is you're shifting your mindset. Yeah. All the ego that you thought was me, I'm awesome, I'm a badass, or no one loves me, bubble, or I'm not in control. It's like you shift your mindset. And I appreciated that training when it came to me in the point of my life that it did, because it helped me see things differently about myself and also how I wanted to be a better employee, a better friend. And I would see further about things than most people were. And I value that about members of the military who have been through that training, our veterans or service members, because that value and that type of training is it can take your organizations so far. And besides, when we get down to it, an organization is pretty much already invested into that training anyway from tax dollars. So you might as well go ahead and get the return on investment and hire those fucking soldiers and veterans.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
So serving in the military, you served under Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
I did.
What was that like? Shifting, I know a lot, but we talked enough about HR.
So the crazy part about all that, when I was actually under that, I was still straight, and I was married, and so
I didn't know you were married.
Yeah, I was married for 7 years.
Wow.
Amazing. Christine was an amazing woman.
Yeah.
She definitely taught me a lot and taught me what it was like to be a good partner. And so she's an amazing individual. And
that's great.
I got to, when did they repeal it? It was
2011.
2011.
September.
So I was married. Yeah. So, we divorced.
The end of that government fiscal year, September. Yeah. September. Yeah.
And, so it was, I kind of came in after it, but it's, I will say that it's so super hard. It was kind of hard for me when I, came out and I'm in the military, because I was still almost afraid of the stigma being 5 years later.
It didn't drop immediately.
And I've been lucky, everyone's been super accepting of it being, because I think around that time I actually left out of being a line unit and went into the instructing world.
Uh-huh.
And so that was always the instructors were always kind of a special breed, if you will. Almost like a bunch of misfits put together. And then I came back to a line unit, and that's almost, I'm thinking, oh my God, do I get to be me? Do I get to be natural?
Right.
Do I get to be whatever? And then I thought, fuck this. Like, I'm going to be who I am.
Yeah.
And I've been open. And I was also super lucky because the unit that I went into, my commander, she was also gay.
Oh,
so
nice.
it's kind of like, the two leaders are like, and we both played softball. And so it was great because she helped open that. And then, and now she's out of there, and I have a new commander. But it was just one of those, I was still kind of timid about it, but then I thought, God, it's 2020.
Yeah.
It's been some time. We need to change that mindset.
Yeah. It's interesting because I got my orders ended that same month that the repeal happened.
So how was that for you?
Well, the shitty part of it was I put in my paperwork to start working on my commission, and moved up to an E6, but I had to go through the physical and everything, and then they discovered the heart stuff, and they were just like, you can't continue on on the commission. As a matter of fact, don't know if you could stay in.
Right.
And that was heartbreaking because the military was the one thing in my life that I felt at the time was a constant in my life.
Yeah.
That was very reliable. I had sisterhood, I had brotherhood, I had experiences to this day that will last my life, that have made me who I am. Not saying screw a 4-year degree, but I learned more in that time than I did ever in a classroom.
Right.
And so I was just brokenhearted because also I had led I had started the national dialogue from Hawaii to start gauging our soldiers in the different units, having after-hours dialogues in regard to what do y'all feel about the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Now, being in a place like Hawaii at the time, it's a little more progressive. People are more laid back. It's aloha. We're laid back. I mean, they wear Hawaiian shirts with their BDUs out on the flight line. So I don't know if it was a hard thing to go against that bureaucratic system to say, I'd like to start a focus group and dialogue. How's that? And they were like, okay. But when the repeal but I had been through 2 investigations before going out to Hawaii. There was it was suspicion. I at the time when I was coming out, there was a fight with my with the family, the struggle, and I know you know a little bit about my family situation with that. And I think it's not proven, but someone called to tip them off at the base. And so then it started. It was a 6-month thing, and I just denied. I denied. And eventually it just went off. They actually sent twice. They sent somebody out to even my work to try to talk to people and everything. And I had a top secret security clearance.
Oh wow!
And because I worked in public affairs, and so it was disheartening, but I got through it.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times during the dialogues, people, they didn't care. Now, again, this was in Hawaii, and we built just a little. I didn't build this like purposeful framework. I got calls from other bases to say, "Hey, we'd like to start a similar dialogue here.
Yeah.
How have you done it?" And I'm just like, "What do you mean? We just pizza, beer, and the family event center, like on base, like that. They allowed us to do some stuff, and that's basically what it was, and just documenting." How were your feelings? And people didn't care. As long as you did your job, they didn't care. And it was still upholding what the values were. Integrity first, service before self, excellence in all we do. Those were the values. Those were the core principles and the values of the Air Force and how it got us to our mission.
Yeah.
And it was more simple than most of the leaders so I didn't. And I knew I wanted to start that dialogue when the discussion on the legislation was coming up. And because I had been through an investigation, and I was like, I want to at least start talking about this because surely this can't be that big of a deal.
Right.
Because I'm seeing some queens out on the flight line, and I'm like, and I know. And so I was just like, this can't, and I'd be on deployments and stuff, and you get to, you have the shots and the beers in the mountains of Kyrgyzstan or wherever you're at on a deployment, and you get to know people.
Yeah.
They can say don't ask, don't tell, but it's like you're having a conversation at a happy hour or somebody with another soldier, and it's like, and when it comes down to it, my dialogue started from, hey, I don't care, man. I love you as long as you're here. And I missed that.
Yeah.
I missed that. And I was like, that was still a workplace.
Yeah.
That was still a workplace. And for a leader or a soldier or a fellow service member to say, I don't care, man, as long as you're here protecting my ass and I'm protecting you, I love you no matter what, dude. Like that to me meant more to me in that moment than the investigation. And I think and then I took that and I was like, we need to start having these critical conversations because people don't really fucking care.
They don't.
It could be one leader with this major fucking ego.
Right.
That wants to keep control of this thing that they think that would disrupt the mission. But that's not the case because there's been no calibration or engaging of the soldier or the member of anybody to find out what's really going on.
Right. And it's funny you say that because it kind of goes back to the whole with this last administration and the whole, transgender people serving in the military and we're not going to allow them to serve because we're trying to protect them.
Right.
I know transgender people in the military and no one gives two shits.
No one gives two shits.
It's like as long as you, like you said, as long as you got my back, I got yours. As long as the mission gets completed, that's all that matters.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and to me, that was such a conundrum when I hear that because I'm thinking that one of the themes of military, I mean, I loved basic training. I loved it.
I did too.
Would I go through it again? Probably.
We're in HR. Yeah. We could.
Would I probably want to do it again? It's one of those experiences I had fun with when I'm like, what? Would I be able to do the same thing? Because, like you said, it's all mentality.
We love suffering.
Right? It's like,
we
put a
thrive
friggin'
through
iron
suffering.
to my skin. And I mean, because I loved like everything about it. And it's, you grew with these people and you worked with them. And I joined during the campaign of an army of one.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very, okay, if you're weak, we're all weak.
Right.
We I don't want to say suffer. We all will improve if you have to improve.
Right.
And it was really great because we learned how to help carry each other and, push people. And I think that's some of the things that we're training soldiers like that. And, even though that might not be the campaign this time, it's still what they resonate in their training.
Yeah.
So it's like to sit here and tell, well, we're not going to allow these people who are transgender to serve because we want to protect them. What are we protecting them from?
Mm-hmm.
Like what? I mean, and it goes, like you said, it goes back to that whole ego, or this is where my mind and my values are. That's how I'm going to drive this policy.
Yeah.
Again, it's, you've got to take that out. You got to take your personal beliefs, your religious beliefs,
Bias. You just gotta take it out of it.
Got to take it out of it and say, you know what? Let's look at this from a neutral perspective and look at the end of the day, the mission.
Yeah.
And I think that's what goes back to focus groups. It's perfect. If you were to sit down and have all these focus groups, how much of that would really come down to it's all for their protection?
Yeah.
That's what kind of killed me when I heard this was happening, because I go, well, we seem to have focus groups over when the military was, revamping their tattoo policy, but we're not going to have focus groups over this? Or if we are, why isn't that being relayed?
And y'all need soldiers.
Right.
And you're kicking them out. What?
Right.
You're creating a policy like you need soldiers. Mission critical. You need soldiers.
Yeah. Again, one of those baffling moments.
I want to say, Jesus, take the wheel.
Right. Let me call Carrie real quick. She's got a straight line to him.
Oh.
It's slippery because you have some black eyes.
I will talk about this and scream about this till I'm blue in the face, is regarding the simplicity. Now, it's a mindset shift again, but once you can get your organization on the same framework as designed with the military, that training, because you're in constant training. Yeah. You're constantly training, so that when the challenge comes up, you're like, I got this.
Right.
And you don't have to work those 50 to 60 hours.
Right.
Because you took care of it, because you got trained for that moment.
Right.
And I just wish more organizations could adopt and see clear of that instead of stigmatizing the military. I think they think of it as like this janky training, this sort of I don't know.
I hear what you're saying.
They want to support veterans, but I'm like, the numbers don't show that.
Right.
The numbers don't show that you're hiring.
It's very janky, like not good training, or they're not training them to think on their own.
Right.
But it's like, no, a lot of the times the Army is teaching you how to be better and how to look at it from different aspects.
Yeah.
And I think people need to understand that, because it goes back to especially the shift in the last 7 years, and company culture and that shit, blah blah blah, and mission statements and vision statements and ethics and morals and our ideologies are so rampant in companies. But I'm like, but are you living them? It's great to put it on paper, to throw it up on a PowerPoint presentation, slap it up on your website. But are you truly doing that? Are you forward thinking? Are you just doing that for shits and giggles to make it look good and to check a box? But are you forward thinking? That's something that truly irritates the F out of me, because I'm a firm believer in, if you've got mission statements, vision statements, live them.
Yeah.
I take the Army values super seriously when I'm, not only outside, but especially when I'm in uniform. And I just
swore an oath.
You swore an oath.
You swore an oath.
And it's like, you see these companies, it's like, oh, we've got these truths up on the wall and we've got all these things and blah, blah. It's like, but are you living them? For God's sakes, are you living them? And that just really irks me, because they're not. And it's like, maybe if you did, your mindset would change, your culture would change, and your company would change for the better. But you want to put them up there, but stick to the, well, this has always worked for us in the past, or the good old boy system, or whatever. And it's sad, and that's why we're not progressing as a society, as an industry either.
We're not evolving with the workforce.
Mm-mm.
We're not.
No.
And that's frightening.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately we need these, and the bigger, larger corporations and companies are feeling the largest impact, and we need them.
Yeah.
Because of our economy, we need them.
Yeah.
But I hope they hear this to understand.
Listen.
Yeah. Listen. Because there are some great parallels here. There's some great loyalty. I like what you said about, in the military, and it is no person left behind.
Right.
We have to be there for one another.
Mm-hmm.
You have in the military or the Air Force, we had a wingman. What did wingman did you have that in the Army, or you just had platoons?
Just platoons, really.
Apparently, we were just twosies in the Air Force. It's like you got a wingman.
Yeah.
But the purpose in basic training, and the purpose was
battle buddy then.
Battle buddy.
Battle is what
so
we
you had
call
battle
them, yeah.
buddy. We had wingman, and so it was your success is their success.
Right.
And that the simplicity of that, it wasn't easy, because there were times I wanted to beat the snot.
Oh, yeah.
Out of and I screamed and I would yell, and I'm like, oh my God, get your shit together.
Right.
But I would still have their helping them with their shit.
Right.
And then we'd go on a walk, or we'd talk through something or whatever. They were really frightened, but they got through it.
Right.
But we're not there for one another. And that was like, well, you're going to fail. You're going to fail if you don't. It's like, how about we start working with one another? Like, where are our battle buddies? Where are our wingmen and the wing people? In the wing people. I don't know if they call them wingman anymore or not, but and we need those within our organizations. They're just good, solid frameworks and structures that could be carried over from those military cultures and operations.
And I agree with that, because that's one thing I've especially I will use that terminology, like we'll say in the military, adjust, fire, and move on.
Yeah.
And people so much in the civilian side are so afraid to mess up or make an error, because they're going to get in trouble, they're going to get fired. We all make mistakes. That's where there's pencils on erasers,
right.
Like adjust, fire, move on. And I actually had an employee one time when I was working at a company. I was a generalist, and the HR assistant was assigned to me, and she had a good 30 years on me, and she was nice, bless her soul. I also caught on very quickly to how she operated. She wouldn't always write things down, so that way at the end of the day, if she didn't have it wrote down, then she didn't know or whatever, so she didn't have something, like she couldn't be blamed. And finally one day I go, I don't know what you're used to, but that's not how I operate. Again, we adjust, fire, we move on. You make a mistake, we say what we learned from it, here's how we're going to fix it, here's what we're going to do going forward, and you go on. And we're so afraid to do that so much in the civilian side, because we're afraid to make a mistake, or how's it going to affect the bottom line. I mean, I can tell you that the CEOs and the owners, they're fucking up, but they're not telling anyone, because it makes them look weak, or it makes it look like they're not competent. But that's how you get to where you are. A lot of trial and error, and taking notes on, like, it's like one of those old Looney Tunes cartoons where they're doing some sort of science experiment, and then it keeps like flipping to the next one. It's like number 242, or whatever. I mean, you have to keep having that trial and error, because that's how we get better, how we make perfection. Not even perfection, but that's how we just get better, we get close to being where we need to be. And it's amazing how I think I'm so annoyed by how we sit here and try to say we've become so great in society, we've become so more progressive, but we're not.
No.
We are not when it comes to this, to work. It's like we still hold those old ideologies true, and we're, it's like no one, wants to, I got to work more than 40 hours a week because I'll get in trouble, or, I can't make a mistake or I'll get in trouble. No, that's not how that works.
No.
I would rather someone who sit there and came to me and is like, yeah, Travis, I effed up royally, but here's what I did to fix the problem. Here's what I'm going to do going forward. I did that tons of times when I worked for one of the companies with my two CEOs, where I'm like, whoopsies, my bad. And I go, but here's how I fixed it. And I go, okay. And I wouldn't even almost give them the option to talk. Like, I was just like, okay, before you could even, start to scream, here's what's going to happen going forward.
Right.
And like, okay, thank you for being honest. Let's go. And I think we don't have those crucial conversations.
No.
No. And that's what's sad. I mean, because that's how you can see how someone's progressing and they're changing, and how they can truly own their mistake and make it better.
Yeah.
So who knows these days?
Who knows? So your role now in the Army is what?
I'm a first sergeant,
and that's a very engaging role with your soldiers.
Yeah, it is. It can be super daunting.
Yeah.
I was really hesitant when I found out that I got the role.
I bet.
I might have let out a series of cuss words, because I was really happy being an instructor, and I didn't want to leave the instructing world. But I'm like, you know what? I've been doing this 9 years. I think it's time to go back to a line unit, get back. And I'm glad I did, because the Army has shifted their training and their mindset into this back to the basics type stuff.
Oh, gotcha.
And
Gotcha.
when I came back to this unit, I already had this mindset. And then, all of a sudden the Army's like, by the way, we're going to start like going back to how it used to be. And I'm like, I love this. Like your mindset is like in sync with mine, because I think that we need to take a step back. And this being a line unit, we need to do a lot of training, not just regular skills, like soft skills.
Yeah.
And I think that was super great. And there's this whole, this is my squad mentality, where you as a like you need to engage with your soldiers. And I've been really pushing that onto my platoon sergeants and onto my squad leaders, where I'm like, okay, I'm in charge of 4 platoon sergeants. You're in charge of 4 squad leaders. They're in charge of 4 or 5 soldiers. Like, you're not here as a platoon sergeant to run a platoon of 30 people. You're here to take care of 4. We keep breaking it down to where it's not a lot of work.
It doesn't seem so overwhelming,
right?
Like that,
exactly. And there is some, a little hesitation just because they're not used to that. And I get it. I used to be a platoon sergeant. I know how daunting it was to be a platoon sergeant. But it's great, and I think just, getting them to share, and that's one thing I love about having the background that I do, especially in the military and being a first sergeant, is that I get to share that. And, one of the things I did with my lower enlisted soldiers about 4 months ago, I brought a financial management expert in, and I said, okay, I want you to teach these soldiers about financial management.
That's wonderful.
And, I was like, because the stigma out there, especially in the Army for sure, is, all these soldiers got the money, like they come out of basic training with this money and they just like buy Corvettes and, all this sort of stuff and get tatted up. And so I'm like, I want you to teach them and I want you to help them. And I think one of the things we're going to do in the next couple months is actually bring someone in to talk to them about, investments, like investing in
wonderful.
401k and things like that. I'm like, think of your future. I was like, my goal is to help you not only be skilled, but to have, amazing personal skills and not just technical skills. Like, we're going to make you a well-rounded soldier and just person in general, because that's how we are.
Yeah. And it makes the transition better outside the military, because it could be culture shock for so many of our soldiers when they're coming out.
Exactly. And I think one of the things I especially love about that is I get to do it on that side and being on the civilian side and having an employer. I don't get to see
both sides.
I don't get to do that. And I'm like, oh my God, like I really love doing this I really feel like I'm helping people. And on the civilian side, being at an employer, I don't feel like I'm helping people all the time.
Yeah.
And there I really get to see, even today, on my drive home from work, I was calling brand new soldiers and saying, hey, it's the first sergeant. They're like, oh my God, why are you calling me? Because apparently first sergeants were all mean. And everyone's like, no one likes them.
Am I in trouble?
Right. I haven't even been in my first drill and you're already calling me. And I go, what do you need from me? Here's what we're going to do. And they're just like, well, I appreciate that. And I think that's it's so great because you get to have that connectivity and that human realness, and that's what I love about it. And they're like, we're not used to this. We're, and I go, that's how I operate.
Yeah.
I'm not your typical first sergeant. I'm not your typical NCO because I don't. While I will play the game, I will do the custom and the courtesies while I'm on military time. I also feel like there has to be a realness to it, and when you bring that realness, it shows the care. It creates trust, and people will reach out to you when they need you.
Yeah.
And I've had soldiers come to me. Hey, I have this personal problem. Can you help? And I'm like, let's sit down and let's see what resources are available for you, and we'll do that. I don't know all of them, but we'll find together, and even some of them don't know how to do that. And teaching them is, it's my children almost, without, having to send them to college, or, pay for their clothes for the Gap. And so it's great. And I love it. And I feel like it was one of the right moves for me.
Yeah.
I really do. I was, like I said, super hesitant because I knew what responsibility and work came with it. And it's still even more responsibility than I anticipated. But at the same time, too, knowing that soldiers know that I'm here for them, and my commander, she's amazing too. Like we are so in sync with each other. We are both like, I agree with that. I don't agree with that. Here's why. For them to see that, they're like, wow. Because I even had like a couple come to Jesus moments with my unit this last drill. I'm like, I'm not here to micromanage you. Like, I'm not here to walk around and see what everyone's doing if you're actually engaged. That's not my job. My job is to motivate you and to empower you to where I don't have to walk around and know. I was like, because I hate being stuck in my office. But I also have to do certain things while I'm here on like drill weekend. I was like, but when I'm out and about and getting engaged with you, I know that you're doing meaningful stuff. And it was so funny because, the Army rolled out this new physical fitness test. Well, it's like CrossFit on crack. And I'm like, people are going to get broke. And so
really?
It is like, from where we were to now, it's pretty
I wonder what the Air Force is up.
I think they're the same.
Now.
Theirs is.
What is it?
The push-ups, the sit-ups, and the bicycle still, I think.
Bicycle.
Yeah, they have the bicycle. I think they still do, don't they?
I did the 1.5 mile run, push-up, sit-ups.
Or maybe it's the alternate that they have then is the bicycle.
Well, one year they did offer to do. I thought this was so ridiculous. They came over around, and I always had perfect. I always had perfect scores on my fit test. I always did, and I remember one year because I had a heart thing, and they were like, you could do the step test. I go, what's that? And they're like, you step on. I go, and I didn't listen, and I just went out to the track, and I ran, and they're like, you weren't supposed to run. I go, that would have stressed me out more than this. But it was 1.5 miles, and then push-up, sit-ups. Push-ups, minute, sit-ups.
Okay.
But what are they now?
Oh, it's a...
Because you're how old?
I'm 37.
Okay, I'm 43, and I think I had to run the 1.5 miles. I can't remember the time. I honestly don't remember. What is it now?
That's one thing I liked about getting older in the military is like, okay, now I have to run 2 miles in 17 minutes and 45 seconds. No issue. 35 push-ups, and I think it was 45 sit-ups in 2 minutes.
Okay.
So not bad. So now it's a 6-event thing.
6 events.
So you've got to do, if I can think off the top of my head. So you got to do the deadlift. And you have to, it's a minimum you have to lift.
Pommel horse rings. No, just kidding.
Hacky sack.
So
Deadlift. You have to do they changed the push-up. So like now when you do push-ups, you push up. And then when you go down to the ground, you do your arms out. I'm still trying to figure out that.
Okay.
And you have to do the leg tuck. So you hang from the bar and then you pull yourself up and touch your knees to your elbows. You have to do the medicine ball toss.
Oh, that's
which isn't too bad. And then you have to do the killer. It is, so you start off on the ground in push-up position. You sprint down. I think it's 25 meters. You sprint back. You grab a 90-pound weight and drag it down, then back. Then you have to do the Heisman, like the feet to out, feet to out, down, back. Then you grab the kettlebells, run down, back, and then you sprint down and back. Holy shit! When we did and then you have to finish with the 2 mile.
Okay. So that is kind of CrossFit on crack. That's much different.
It is. And one thing that is great is the 2 miles, it's not gender or age based anymore.
Yeah.
It's everyone has 20 minutes to complete, 21 minutes to do the 2 miles.
Gotcha.
So
that's cool. That keeps it on a, yeah.
A few months, the month before we actually took the diagnostic, the commander and I are out there doing it. And I got super sidetracked with something. And I got out there and I was only able to do the leg tuck thing and then the dragon pull. And so her and I are she goes first and does it, and then I do it right after her. And of course, everyone's flocking over to watch the commander and the first sergeant do it. And I'm like, good God. And so then I'm doing it, and I was so it was that 5 so when you do all this dragon stuff, you got 3 minutes to get it done.
Oh.
So, and I think I got mine done in like a minute and 50 seconds. I don't know why I was being hua overachiever. And so I thought I was gonna literally die afterwards. I was walking away
Travis vomits on his commander. I did, sir.
She's sitting there practically dying. I'm this is it. This is how we're going out. This is it. This is what takes us. And so we were joking the next month when we did the diagnostic, because her and I are okay. So, lieutenant, platoon leader, just be prepared to take over as commander. And I'm and you over here, be prepared to take over as first sergeant, because I think we're going to die doing all events today at once. But we both did really well. And it was one of those things, it felt good, because I'm as a first sergeant, I'm able to do it. And of course, as I'm doing it, they're oh, well, why don't you deadlift more? And I go, I'm not overexerting myself. This is a diagnostic. Right. I am not. Oh, come on, first sergeant, set the standard. I'm oh, we ain't playing this stuff right now,
Yeah.
I'm no.
Yeah.
You can't play the mind games on me.
I
I'm
met
37.
the requirements. I did. Yeah.
I'm not gonna sit there and try to lift, and then my legs are. I'm I have skinny legs. These scenes aren't gonna wear out before the whole thing even starts. So it was great. It was good, but it's just getting out there to be with them. And one thing I always was taught, because when I got into the military, I had amazing mentors.
Yeah.
And I've always pushed mentorship in the military. And I'm I will teach you to fish, but I will not fish for you.
Good.
I will be out there, I will do stuff with you. If I'm not stuck on some conference call or bombarded, I will get out there and I will do training with you. I'm not too good for it, because unfortunately I've seen those type of leaders where it's oh no, I'm not going to stay out in a tent. No, you're staying out in a tent.
Yeah, stay in the tent. Not if you're Air Force.
Right, you got the air conditioned tents, trailers. So I think that's one thing I do especially love about, as stressful as being a first sergeant can be.
Yeah.
I feel I get to actually bring that human realness and that special, I don't know what I was about to say, special touch of HR.
Yeah, it's a special touch.
I get
it
to
really
bring
is.
it over on that side, and I think that's part of the reason, especially why I'm so trying to engage more in consulting, because I want to get in there and really work with small businesses and medium businesses, and go get to bring that and help shape companies and say, okay, let's mold you while we can before you're stuck in your ways, because God knows that's going to be a lot of couch sessions and why your mama didn't love you type things to get you to break your mindset to say, this is what's best for not only my company, but my employees.
Yeah.
Your employees are an investment. They are an asset.
Yeah.
And your companies are what make your employees are what make your company move.
Yeah.
And, that's what sometimes people forget when you look at not construction, but, you look at, warehouse work. It's your people who work on the line. I mean, they make your company. And you've got to think about that. Just because you're up in the air conditioned office making decisions doesn't mean that you're better than the ones down there that are actually filling those orders or putting vehicles together. And people lose sight of that.
They do.
And that's what's sad. And it's we all contribute to the big picture. And it goes back to that treat the janitor or custodial as you would the CEO.
Yeah.
Like, you show them respect, treat them
Yeah.
as a person, and people forget that it's so much about hierarchy and titles.
Yeah.
I mean, you can put a title on anything.
Yep.
I'm an HR guru. I'm an HR whisperer. Like, you can do that. Which yours is HR whisperer, isn't it?
It's the people whisper, but you're right. You've got to have some action to that.
Yeah.
You've got to have that action to it, because it's a heavy responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, because once you open your mouth, it's like a Pandora's box. Or once it's like you can't go back.
Right.
It's like you can't go back to being an asshole. You're here. You're here.
Yeah.
So settle into it.
Exactly.
Yeah. How do people get connected with you, and what's the next step for Travis?
I'm on MySpace. No, I'm just kidding. I don't even, is MySpace even around anymore?
I don't think so.
Zynga, yeah.
What's that one?
It's like something way below our age. Like, Blaine talks about Zynga. I'm like, what the F are you talking about?
Zynga.
Yeah, it's like, what is it?
It's like the original. It came before MySpace.
Yeah.
Is it making a comeback?
I
No, I'm kidding.
Oh.
But like, MySpace did come back for a while, like for more like music platforms and artists.
Oh, wow.
And Tom was still their number one friend, but
Oh my gosh.
but now I kind of want to go look at MySpace,
Yeah,
MySpace.com,
see if
and
it's
Glitter
still
and
there.
My Little Ponies.
I had a MySpace.
So
for
yeah,
2
I'm on
months.
LinkedIn, Travis S. Johnson.
Okay.
S is important. I also do have my oh my god, I'm drawing a blank now. My LinkedIn consulting page, which is, I always forget it. It's linkedin.com/company/tsj-hr. Or you can also email me at tsjhrconsult@gmail.com.
Perfect.
Yeah, so I want to work with small businesses, really help them grow them, just really bring that great culture and just the warm and fuzzies.
I think you say the army of one. It's like you're an HR of one. You literally are, and you
Yeah.
do it so well.
Oh, well, thank you.
You do it so well.
I've always been one of those
and eloquently.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
It's not what the bathroom walls say. But well, and it's so crazy. It's like,
Thanks for coming.
Oh shit.
Okay.
But that's like one thing I've always loved about HR is I hated being siloed.
Yeah.
Like, I love being able to not do it all, but do multiple things.
Yeah.
And I think that's what always draws me so much to the smaller entrepreneurial type mindsets and companies. It's, we get to engage in everywhere,
Yeah.
and I get to, if you need me to help you come over here and move desk or paint or whatever, like, I can do that, and I love that.
Yeah.
It's great. I'm gonna start stealing that HR of one.
HR of one.
I'm
And
still-
it's so right now, we have to get to the realization and close this out, but we do have to get to the realization that we hear so much of the 5 steps to a great HR team, to a diversity sourcing from these larger corporations.
Right.
But what we really need to, or what we should also be investing in, is these HR of one, and these organizations that do need some really solid quality help on how to help them as much as we can with the larger corporations that have the big budgets.
Right.
There's an opportunity of what you're able to do
Yeah.
here, and I see how valuable you're going to be when
Thank you.
as
I
we
hope.
see this move forward.
Yeah.
You're the best.
Oh, well,
Thank
you
you
too.
for your service. Thank you for being here.
Oh,
and
thank you
just,
for having
dude,
me.
Thank you for being a badass.
Oh, well, thank you. I try.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.